It's always a race to see if I can like get a little coffee before the recording starts, but I never do.
You
Hi,
missed it.
Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm going to have my coffee in a second because I'm going to ask you, tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Josh Sweeney. I'm the president and founder of Founder Scale. And at Founder Scale, we help businesses go from founder revenue to scalable revenue.
Right on. Okay, Josh. So you do some fractional work.
I
You help
do.
other companies, obviously. That's kind of the whole mission. And so I want to drop you into hypothetical scenario number one and see how it works out. So, unlike many of your clients, I imagine, since we're in the 21st century now, this one is not virtual. Like they're only 5 minutes from your home. So you decide first day of this brand new customer, brand new engagement, you're going to drive over on a Monday at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever, and like you're going to walk in, and your first day or a part of it is going to be at the client site. Okay,
Okay.
so it's day one. You're going in. You're there. What's the dream scenario you're walking into with a new client, and what's a nightmare scenario you're walking into with a new client?
Let's see. The dream scenario is I think it's important to note, like, as a fractional CRO, Chief Revenue Officer,
Yeah.
we primarily focus on founder led companies. So we're pretty
Yes.
unique in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so the dream scenario for us is that we're working with a founder and team who kind of has a good idea and knows what they don't know. So they've recognized that they've tried many things from a sales and marketing perspective, and
Right.
now they want to work with somebody at an executive level
Right.
and a team member that's going to drive revenue and help in those areas. So really, when they know what they don't know and they're looking for that advice, it's really the dream scenario because it means they're open to the collaboration and the other elements that are going to make this successful.
And what's the nightmare?
The nightmare is really the inverse. It is really the founder who wants you to be a cog in the wheel
Right.
instead of an executive. So, since we work primarily with founders, this is called Jim Collins calls it genius with 1,000 helpers. A lot of times, the founder of the business is so used to directing every single person, they're not really used to working or acclimated to working with another executive on the team or giving them decision-making authority or anything else that a CRO would actually want in order to
Right.
go attack a problem. So that can be a real nightmare scenario.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so you're going to spend the first few hours of the morning there because you had a prior engagement. And so now you're downtown, big hotel, there's a conference there, and you're the keynote speaker today on stage this afternoon. Everyone in the audience, all 250 of them, have worked their way up, right? They've paid their dues, but all of them, coincidentally, tomorrow start their very first job as a CRO, like at that level.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're talking to these poor people and trying to like sort of insulate and prepare them for what they're going to face. And so I'm going to give you 3 sentences as we move through your talk, and you can just finish the sentence with as long as you need in order to like give them the answer. Okay. So the first thing you're saying is, look, as a chief revenue officer, like starting at a company, you're going to be very surprised by what?
As a CRO, starting your day at a company, a new
Yeah.
company, you're going to be very surprised at all the way that company culture and the way that the company is run will actually
Mm-hmm.
block your success.
Please elaborate on
Go further. Got it. What we find is there are with any company there's ingrained culture and there's
it.
ingrained
Sure. Yeah.
perceptions and knowledge that either does or does not exist. And so oftentimes as the CRO, you're coming with significant industry knowledge or significant knowledge in sales and marketing. And there's often a gap between you and the people that you're working with on that portion of knowledge, right? They may have other knowledge you don't have.
Right.
And so there's a lot of conversations and blockers because of the perception of those individuals and how marketing might work or should work, or how sales might work or should work, whereas you're coming in with that executive level knowledge. So I've often been surprised by how companies can block a lot of the outcomes that you would want to have, and what most companies would see as a positive outcome because of those gaps.
All right. All right. Interesting. Okay. So continuing on our talk, right? You say like what you're going to find is most companies, when it comes to understanding what you do for them, most companies just don't understand what.
Most companies just don't understand that revenue generation is a math problem, not a creative problem.
Okay.
So what we find is most don't understand the actual inputs and the outputs that help them generate revenue. A lot of them look at it very tactically and start to try and put little tactical band-aids on things, or look at a certain medium or channel as the solution to their problems. And what we find is in most organizations, it's not the big, huge creative campaign that is on all sorts of billboards and
Right.
aligned with your sales reps that really generates a lot of the revenue. Again, we work for mostly founder led companies, so we're not running mega
Mm-hmm.
campaigns. And what we find is it is more of a math problem. It's that based on their CAC, or customer acquisition cost, there's actually not even enough money to generate the revenue they're looking for or to hit that revenue goal. Or there's not enough other inputs financially that are going to create that outcome. So we like to really dive into the math instead of having lots of opinions on why something does or doesn't work, and make sure that the math adds up. And then we can get into the next level of detail on hitting revenue goals.
All right. All right. So we're going to finish up your speech. Some intern is trying to like shoo you off, right? But you're like, by God, you're going to say this one last thing to this audience before they get rid of you. And it's this like, look, it's not all bad news. At some point, maybe it's a few months in, maybe it's a few weeks in, but maybe it's a year. But at some point, the rest of the C suite is going to have an aha moment about you and what you're providing. What's the aha moment when they really get it?
When the C suite really gets it is when they understand how the budget and the commitment over time drives the revenue goals. They understand how the money in factors into customer acquisition cost, and that capital is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, driver of revenue generation on the back end. And then everything else comes in after that, as opposed to under budgeting or just telling everybody to hustle harder and all the other things that come up.
Okay, so they managed to get you off stage. It wasn't easy. And so now you're out on the conference floor. There's booths and there's people milling around, right? And there's like casual conversations, and you've got some meetings set up, and you're talking to companies, one or more of whom might are right now your next prospective clients and may become your next clients. Okay. So we're in like your sales process at this point. So you're talking to these prospective clients about you and your company and what you do. And they're talking to you about what they understand about sales and strategy and so on. What do prospects, your prospects, tend to overrate, and what do they underrate that you may have to correct them on or like reset them on?
So most of the people we work with and founders we work with to scale revenue overrate all of the hype that they hear
Mm-hmm.
from different firms and vendors, and sometimes influencers and everything else, that really talk about how easy it is to drive leads
Right.
and scale revenue. There's just a lot of hype, and it's hard to turn that off because it's so persistent. And they really overhype and overrate the complexity, right? It's extremely hard to build sustainable revenue growth, and it's a complex problem. So they overrate the quick fix solutions and want it fixed much more quickly a lot of times, or in ways that really just aren't gonna map out.
And what do they underrate?
We find that they underrate sitting in a room together and really building a solid 1 to 2 year plan and capitalizing that plan, being clear about the leading and lagging indicators and the scenarios in which they should or should not continue with that plan. Oftentimes it's more knee-jerk reaction, like it didn't work in 90 days, we're just going to stop.
Right.
And, even though you discussed that it would take 6 months to see a certain result, and if we did, we should stay on this plan. So because they don't sit in a room and really do a solid 1 or 2 year plan that also is capitalized and also has milestones and checkpoints, a lot of times it causes alignment issues down the line. And it causes people to stop doing things when they were going to work. And they just underrate that process.
It's just a lot of mini pivots.
A lot of mini pivots. Yeah.
Right. All right. And then as you're talking to your own prospects, what are a couple of green flags and what are a couple of red flags that might get thrown up as you're talking to them? It's like, oh, not these guys. Like they're not there yet, or they just don't get this yet, or we're not going to be a fit for these guys, or, oh my God, I want this customer so bad. What are like some green flags and some red flags?
Yeah. So since we finally, we work with founders to scale revenue in founder-led businesses, we kind of understand that's a different mindset and challenge than an enterprise level organization and working as a CRO in that type of organization. And I think Jim Collins said it best. It's called the hubris of success. That's the biggest red flag. So these are the founders that they've been on a really good growth trajectory. And they have a certain amount of hubris of success. They feel like they already know exactly what they need. And they're just kind of inserting you as a cog in their machine. Right. And oftentimes we know from experience, they're going to hit a plateau at some point. And that can definitely be some red flags when we're going through the prospect experiences. Is they have 100% conviction of what they already need. And they should probably just hire somebody to do that one thing instead of be a CRO.
Right. What are some green flags?
The green flag, the easiest way to explain that is kind of our perfect client. Right. So our perfect client and founder that we would be a fractional CRO for is one that has already tried multiple sales and marketing tactics to try and generate revenue, and they have not seen the ROI. Because at that point, what they've done is they've gotten past the hype of how easy it is to continue scaling at a certain rate. And they've come to the realization that scalable revenue is a lot harder than everybody makes you believe. So once they've gone through that journey and recognized it, oftentimes they are now at a point where they're willing to look at the strategy and sit down and talk to somebody who's already been through that journey and want to have somebody to walk that journey with them, which is a very different mindset than just writing a check and hoping somebody generates leads for you.
Fair enough. All right. And then that's sort of like, so we've been through 3 beginnings. First day on stage with the new people, talking to your own clients. There's one more type of beginning, which is assuming that today's the beginning. What do you think sales and selling is going to look like over the next, or will it change at all? Or do people need to pay attention to different things in the next 18, 24 months? Or is it pretty much still the fundamentals and the eternals? There's no wrong answer here.
I think there is so how will sales and selling change over the next few years? There's been a macro trend of more and more people needing to more and more people doing their research online. So this is different. Selling trends are different for B2B and B2C sales companies or companies in general. There's a lot of nuance there. But there has been a multi-decade trend of people doing more and more research online. And so I think the trend will continue around the ability to build relationships and rapport for somebody to make a purchase. On the smaller end, it's easier. You may have to build less rapport and less relationship if it's $100 purchase, where you will have to build more rapport and build more trust with a $1 million purchase. So I think the trend's going to continue, that rapport building, transfer of trust will be reflected in a lot more marketing material on the website. If you think of like sales enablement documents and reviews and testimonials, use of video, I think there's going to continue to be a trend where we try to build more trust at scale, even for larger sales.
Right.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing, how people adapt to that transfer of trust and being able to scale their organizations as that happens.
Can I? Normally, I would let us wind down at this point, but I want to keep you here for a tiny bit
Okay,
longer. I
sure.
have a. This is episode 16 of this podcast, and I have an episode, and we're just about to finish the last few episodes of 200 on the CMO podcast. And talking about AI specifically, there seems to be a different focus in marketing teams
Mhm.
versus sales teams. And I want to know if you've A, observed this, and B, what you think about it. It seems like in the marketing side, they both the AI trends and the like executive focus is on enhancing. If you imagine that all marketing team and all Salesforce team workforces are at three tiers, right? There's junior, there's mid tier, and there's the senior people, right? In marketing, they want to hire more cheap junior people and enhance them with AI, right? Enable them
Yeah.
and provide them with it. Wipe out the middle. It's never safe to be in the middle, right? The way I explain it to the customers, it doesn't matter how much traffic there is or how little traffic there is. The middle of the road is still always the most dangerous place to stand. So
Yeah.
don't do that. And then, but in marketing, they're really getting an idea that they can use AI to not necessarily eliminate, but really whittle down the top end, the senior people, the film directors, the graphic artists, right? The script writers, the copywriters, and whatever, right? In that AI can do a lot and more and more and more of that work. And sales, it seems to be very different. And it goes back to what you were just saying. In sales, of course, they still want to get rid of the middle. Everyone wants to get rid of the middle. Uh, they want to, as it seems, the trend is to not use AI to augment lots of junior people, but to use AI. I'm thinking like SDR roles and like
Yeah.
outbound to actually, like, if possible, remove the bottom tier and have AI do a lot of that initial stuff, but preserve the senior people because it's a relationship. Ultimately, it's a relationship sale in B2B anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so they want to preserve the experienced salespeople, the ones with like long-term relationships and like lots of connections in whatever community you're selling into and so on. And so marketing and sales seem to be doing it differently, right? Everyone gets rid of the middle, but in marketing, let's see what we can do to get rid of the senior folks and hire lots of junior folks with AI. And in sales, let's get rid of the junior folks and replace them with AI, get rid of the middle, of course, and like focus and preserve how we can like help and enhance the senior folks. Like, is that what you're seeing too? Or do you have a different take on it?
I don't know if I've analyzed kind of the whether it's knocking out the middle or the bottom, or however you want to position that, the level that the person's at. It seems to be pretty nuanced, and kind of whatever we say here is going to change in the next 12 months because it's
Yeah.
moving extremely
Change the next 12
rapidly.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But we've been using AI for ourselves and with
Mm-hmm.
clients, and we're finding use cases for it to be an accelerator.
Yeah.
And then we're finding other places where it's just not having an impact. So, for example, with content, very rapid development of ideation and
Right.
everything else. And it gets you a lot of content right out of the gate and ideas. But what we're still finding is if you really have a brand position and you're not just a generic replicant of
Mm-hmm.
all the other things that everybody else does, and you have a position, you still need, like you said, that senior content person
Yeah.
to go tweak that. So could they get it done faster? Yes, they can get it done faster now because they can ideate faster,
Right.
have more ideas, pick the top one out of five instead of manually
Or I don't
writing.
need two of those senior people. Now I need one.
Yeah,
And I know.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we are seeing it. So I'm not sure about it knocking out the middle because it's almost like all of the R&D to go get those five ideas might have been done by, frontline lower
Mm-hmm.
cost writers now. Right? So you actually, you took care of that and moved content straight up to your senior person to then overlay your brand and voice onto it more rapidly. So it's nuanced by, I think, each area of sales and marketing. Whereas it's like, what problem are you trying to solve, and how is AI an accelerator? And then, like on the kind of, you use SDR as an example. I think that's one that's going to backfire pretty bad. I'm
Yeah.
already seeing a huge increase in the number of just spam emails where they're
Yep.
taking and using it to substitute lots of information. And so we're seeing more people actually ignore that model. It happened during COVID, right?
Yeah.
LinkedIn came on hard and strong, and it was the new way to do things. And everybody were promoting that as the channel to go to. Well, once everybody does that,
Yep.
then everybody starts turning off all the notifications and stops using LinkedIn. So on the sales side, it's pretty tough because when you start using tools like that to increase volume, you really crush that medium very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's as far as you can get from relationship building when it's B2B.
Yeah.
So there's just nuance, I think, in every kind of medium and channel where AI is having an impact and where it'll have a positive and negative impact.
On the sales side, I guess exactly what you were talking about, where all of a sudden the cost of distribution has been free for quite a long time now, thanks to the internet.
Right.
But now the cost of creation or production is almost near zero as well. And so everybody's inbox is jammed. Everybody's feed is jammed, right?
Right.
And I was talking to this one person, and he says, yeah, we pretty much only focus on old, obsolete channels now because
Yeah.
like he says, like you would not believe he gets like a 70, they're in the,
Oh, yeah.
he's got like a 79% conversion rate for snail mail, like sales letters,
Oh, yeah.
just like a single piece of paper, two sides. It's not like, but he said like that channel is completely open. Like people open mail now because they don't get very much of it. And he says we can't really rely on calls yet because no one will answer a phone call if they don't recognize the number. But he says all of these like non-standard channels are just wide open now. He says we're going to every conference we can get to
Yep.
because like it's face to face, right? And he says all of these like old channels are still like wide open, and the cost of production or creation in them hasn't dropped. Right, it costs just as much now to send a letter as it did 10 years ago, maybe. And like conferences are not any cheaper, whereas email is
Right.
even personalized AI personal email is basically free. He says like we go to the places where you have to spend at least something on production because the channels are wide open. Everyone's rushed into the other ones and just crushed everybody's attention span,
Oh, yeah.
and like everybody's disgusted with all the crap they have to. Right? Someone explained it to me last year. Even he says like everyone. So he says sometimes in life there are, and especially at work, there are terms that used to mean something and now they mean something else. He said when I started out in this, like he's been in that company forever. He says when I started out, checking your email meant opening and reading emails. He says today checking your email starts with deleting almost all of the emails
Right.
before you ever read them.
Totally
Checking
different
email
function.
means
Right.
deleting email.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever's left, that's what you open.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting because that's what we see. I mean, in working with founders is,
Yeah.
especially on the B2B side, right? If you're going to carve that out and it's very separate from B2C, is it's a transfer of trust and a building of a relationship. And so the further you get from that, whether it's sending out lots of emails or the further the AI gets from helping you build trust and
Yeah.
build and maintain a relationship, the more, kind of spammy it becomes. So I'm looking for the tools now and working on tools where it says, you met Dean, you had a great podcast with him. How can you stay in touch with Dean? What
Yeah.
would you reach out? Where would you invite him to go? Is he going to be in Atlanta? Can you invite him to that event? Can he remember that when he flies in, you're going to take him out? I'm looking for those tools that really help me build the relationship and also
Yes.
maintain it over time in a valuable way, not just, hey, by the way, just checking in, that's
Right.
kind of surface level stuff. And I think that's always been the case in B2B. It's
Yeah.
always been relationship building and trust. And you could say that's not the case in some instances. I think the lower the cost of purchase, the
Right.
less transfer of trust and relationship you have to have, but the higher the cost, the more. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of at least an easy way we can visualize it without getting into a bunch of nuance.
Yeah. When I'm talking to prospects and we talk about B2C versus B2B, I say, look, regardless of like the definition you like to use for B2B versus B2C, it comes down to this. If one person can immediately pull out a credit card or issue a PO and buy it without talking to anyone else, it's a B2C sale. A B2B sale is where you're never talking to the final decision maker until eventually you're talking to the final decision maker, right? If they don't,
Yeah.
they have to go to procurement or legal or the steering committee or the budget committee or their boss, right? Or the CEO, but the CEO has to take it to the board, right? If multiple people have to say yes or at least not say no, and one of them will say yes, that's a B2B sale. And everything else, you can treat it like B2C, even if it is two companies selling to each other.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't defined it quite that way, but it's very, yeah, I think it's on point for sure because the fundamentals are there. One person can
Yeah.
make the decision, just like if one person decides they want to join a new gym.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah. How the way we normally talk to do it is the way that I explain it to them is this: in a B2C sale, even if it's like a business selling to a business, we're trying to create this moment. I need that. And in B2B, we're trying to create this moment. My boss is going to want to talk to these guys,
Right.
right? And
I
they're
like that.
very different
Yeah.
goals.
Oh yeah.
And so you just like, you have to treat them differently and they don't mix. So you're not going to get one and the other. You're going to
Right.
get, my boss is going to want to meet these guys, right? This is something I need to like bubble up. This is good for me if I bubble this up to my boss. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
all right, Josh, episode 16. Thank you very much, man. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you. It's
Love
been a good
this.
discussion.
All right. And everyone, thanks. See you next time. Bye.